Welcome to the Book Buzz Show with Cheryl, where we dive into the captivating world of books. Here at the Book Buzz Show, we encourage you to make your pages turn with joy and immerse yourself in a magical literary experience. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Book Buzz Show with Cheryl, where we dive into the captivating world of books. Here at the Book Buzz Show, we encourage you to make your pages turn with joy and immerse yourself in a magical literary experience. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Book Buzz Show. I'm your host, Cheryl Brooks. And if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. And if you enjoy the upcoming show, please like, follow, subscribe, and share the broadcast so others also can enjoy it. For those who are new here at the Book Buzz Show, we do discuss the book and the characters. So there will be some minor spoilers. We don't give anything major way that would interfere with your reading enjoyment, though. Also, in addition to being a live broadcast, the Book Buzz Show is now also a podcast. So if you can check us out at the Book Buzz Show with Cheryl, wherever you get your podcast, that way you can listen to us when you're on the go. And I also want to mention that tonight's episode is being brought to you in partnership with Black Odyssey Media. And let's see. There is Black Odyssey Media's logo. And you can check out their roster of authors. They have several authors on their underneath their roster that I'm sure you will enjoy. And you can check them out at blackodyssey.net. All right. And tonight, I am so happy to be speaking with S.W. Frank about her Alfonzo series. I started reading, I looked back to see, and it looks like I started reading the series back in 2015 and loved it. You know, anybody who knows, I love reading a good mafia story, and I love anything that has to do with strong family bonds and friendship bonds and all of that. So, and the Alfonso series has all of that. Here is the book cover for book one. For those who are watching, if you're listening, again, it's the Alfonso series by S.W. Frank. If you haven't checked it out, make sure to, if you are into any kind of like mafia crime series, you will love it. All right. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on tonight's guest, S.W. Frank, and my co-host for this evening is Katina Brown. So let me bring them to the stage. Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
All right. It looks like we have a couple of people in the audience.
Yeah.
Facebook user. If you go to the description at the top, you can click on the link and it'll give StreamYard permission to show your name so we'll know who you are. And Ola, thank you for joining us.
Hey,
And
Ola.
Ola, you know that I'm always telling you about some new books. So if you haven't read this series, you will enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All righty. So we're going to get right into it because we have a lot to discuss. Okay, so SW, I wanted to ask you. Let me see. We go back to this first before I get into that. Let's see. because if a lot of people probably don't know, so if you could tell us about your professional writing journey and how you got started.
She's still
Oh,
muted.
oh, you know what? Okay, I just took you off mute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hi. Thanks for having me. I'm
You're
just
welcome.
checking to see if you can hear me clearly.
I
I
can
did.
hear you. Yep.
It's
You
better.
can. Okay, great. Because I didn't get to log in with my computer, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
basically using my phone. But thank you so much, Cheryl and Katina, for inviting me. And hi to everyone in the audience. So your
Thank you.
question.
I appreciate you coming on. Like I told you off camera, I have been a fan of the Alfonso series, so I look forward to talking to you about it.
Oh, wow. Thank you again. Your question as to my writing journey, I
Hmm.
mean, it sounds a little cliche, and I'm sure that, a lot of writers probably say the same thing, but it really is something that, I've always been a reader. I've always enjoyed the art. So it wasn't too far-fetched for me to get into writing. Um, I've always written stories. I've written stories for my children. I've written stories to engage workers sometimes when I
Okay.
was a kid. So it's been something that's been part of my life, even in, very strenuous jobs, very, very hard jobs. Sometimes I use stories to also take my partners away from a scene that we may have had. I was a
Mm,
fire department medic, um, so it was a very strenuous and mentally engaging job a lot.
right.
So it was one of the ways that on my downtime I would write stories. My partner would ask me to read some of it, but earlier than that, I was writing. So it's been something that I've enjoyed, not just as escapism, but also because I wanted to represent Black women in stories that I wasn't seeing a lot in a positive way. So I made them the love interest, and it was sort of my love letter to Black women to say that you are loved, not just by Black men, but men from different ethnicities and nationalities. So
Mm.
that's one of the reasons why I made sure that the women that I put in the story, the Black women, were represented in the way that I see.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you too. What made you decide on writing a multicultural, where the love interest was not a black man?
Well, I have Black sons, Black brothers. I also have Puerto Rican family members. So I grew up a lot hanging out in Harlem, in Spanish Harlem,
Hmm.
and it's really like a family. When you're out in Harlem, you have Spanish family members. No one's really looking at, you know, you're Puerto Rican, this person's black, this person's from Guyana.
Right.
We hang together, we have some of the same issues, and those issues, the human story, is the same issues that we all face.
Right.
We all have families, we all love, we all are dealing with violence, police brutality, racism, sexism. So these are interconnected stories. So I've written about Black men as well in my stories. There are plenty of Black men that are in my stories, but when I was writing Alfonso, I was writing it from a perspective of I was in Spanish Harlem a lot.
Hmm.
Um, Friends with Spanish, and those were also family members. So I wanted to incorporate the Spanish side and the Black American side.
Okay. Um, Now, when you first started, like when you decided to actually publish, did you shop the book around first, or did you just decide to go the independent route?
Well, the independent route wasn't even something that I thought of back in the early 90s, mid 90s, because I was writing Alfonso's way back when,
Okay.
the early 90s. So Alfonso is a personal story that was with me for many, many years. So I did shop it around a bit, and some of the rejection letters that I got actually said if you change the ethnicity
Mm.
of
Wow.
the main character, the love interest,
Hmm.
maybe you revisit. Um, so on that note, I stuck to my guns. I said I was not changing its ethnicity because the meat of the story is the struggle of people of color
Mm.
and Black women's struggle. So I refuse to kind of go mainstream, which is a code word for palatable for a Caucasian audience.
Mm.
Hmm. Wow.
I love that. And then now when you were did you do any type of like research? Because when I was reading the series, I've read it. It's been so long ago now. I had to go back and like do a
Mhm,
little rereading, but I still remember the meat of the series. But
mhm.
when you were researching, did you have to like do any specific type of research into like mafia culture, the Italian mafia in particular? And I know you said you were in Spanish Harlem a lot as far as the Spanish culture and all of that.
Mhm. Well, yes, I did a lot of research, but I also know people who were in the mafia um, by acquaintance.
Okay.
So I do have a family member who works on a mafia member's restaurant, and I sat there. I have pictures of Gotti's funeral. So there are things that element of the story. Some of it is based upon, rubbing shoulders with these people. I'm in New York. So
Hmm.
you only have Italian mafia, you have black mafia members, you have Latino mafia people. So gangs and mafia to me are all kind of incorporated in that story as well to show that there is not just one mafia
Hmm.
as people may perceive it to be Italian. There's also mafia members who are non-Italian.
Mm. Now that's what I was going to ask too, as far as um, would how would it be for someone who was non-Italian or who was half Italian to infiltrate basically that world in real life? Do you think?
Well, for the Italian mafia, it's not easy. I mean, you have to be Italian. You have to
Hmm.
be a person. I mean, they do have people who have worked for them, but they're not usually
Right.
in person. So that's the Italian mafia. With Alfonso, I made sure that I brought it from a place of um, his father was a Sicilian mafia in Sicily. So he sort of inherited that world, even though
Right.
he didn't live it. And they did not, and they didn't accept him actually because in his background, he's not full Sicilian. He's also Puerto Rican. His
Hmm.
is African,
Right. We
and
did find that out. That's right.
right. And in the spinoff that I did, or the book Samira, where you have her story in this fictional world, she created the mafia and the Italians copied it.
Mm. I'm gonna have to go back and reread that. Um, I forgot
Hmm.
about that. You're right.
So,
It was so many layers to the story and to the series. Just so many nuance. It was so nuanced. Now I do remember, and I was going to ask you this: some of the just it was par for the course because of the world that you set it in, but there were so many traumatic moments that involved a lot of the characters that we had come to love.
yeah.
Um, and so those were difficult moments. Now, as a writer, was it difficult for you to come to that decision to whatever to kill off somebody that you knew that the readers were fond of.
Well, when I'm writing, I'm truly sometimes in the story, and the story sometimes takes a life of its own. But
Hmm.
one of the things that I have done and what I wanted to do, intentionally did, was I wanted to break from the formulaic type scenes that people are accustomed to, like romance. Romance usually is very linear and is very strict. Like you can't have adultery, you can't
Right.
have
Right.
can't have even questionable character. They can't do like major crimes. There's so much strictness in it that for me, it does not ring true to reality. And since I write like a realism fiction, I
Hmm.
wanted to do something based on reality that we are not perfect and that not everyone is not a saint and people make mistakes and forgiveness is part of that journey of love as well.
Yeah.
So if so that was one of the things that I set out to do. And I know that for some readers it was uncomfortable, but my
Hmm.
job as a writer is to stay authentic to my story and to my process. And so if it made someone uncomfortable, I did my job because adultery is not a comfortable subject to talk about. It's not something that I condone, but it's
Hmm.
part of reality. And I flipped the script actually because initially I had more storylines where it was Alfonso who was being,
Hmm.
but I stripped that away because I said to myself, that's been done before.
Hmm.
Let's move this around and let's make her have an affair.
Hmm.
And what I did walk away with from the responses from most of the readers, or some of the readers actually, was that they were surprised by it. They were surprised, and some of them after that just couldn't stand Solange. But
Right.
when I was on my chat room with them, and I spoke to them, and I explained to them. I said, "Listen, here's the deal. When men cheat, if they're repentant, if they're changing their ways, women are more apt to forgive them. Why, if it is a woman,
Hmm.
that we are harsher with a woman than we are with a man?" So those were some of the questions I left the reader with because it was not just she cheated just for the fun of it. She also had PTSD. There were some elements to that beforehand that had
Hmm.
occurred. I hinted at Alfonso cheating, but some of those things were missed. So I had to just make that narrative. I had to have the reader engage with it and maybe walk away with a different perspective about what she did. Like I said, I don't condone cheating, but in reality, people have committed adultery.
And they
True.
make mistakes, right?
Right. But I have to admit, me as a reader too, you want that strong bond that nobody can basically break. And so I was very disappointed in the character of Solange because but I was also surprised. Um, and I was also surprised with who it was because the loyalty factor with that. Um, so I'm glad to get your perspective on it because I was thinking about that from when I read it back then, and I do remember some backlash from some of your readers as far as they were saying it was out of character for Solange and all of that.
No,
Um,
it wasn't out of character for Solange. It was out of character for them. See, it's a fictional story, but
mhm,
yet, when you really think about it, this is a fictional story, but it is a story of many millions of women probably who have um, committed adultery.
Hmm.
right.
Um, and it's also about, like I said, flipping the script because in romance that's unheard of. So
Right.
I need to put some realism to it. Um, and you know, if it got some, blowback, or some people didn't, really think that that was her character, but do we really know anybody? I mean, there are people who do things that you wouldn't have expected them to do. That
And
is
that's
just
true.
human nature. You
That's true.
don't really know anyone, and if you put them in a certain circumstance, which Solange was in quite a bit, she was with her children a lot while her
Hmm.
husband was traveling. She was spending and bonding a lot with Nico. And if you think about it in terms of work relationships, when you have people who are at work and spending more time at work and
Right.
with children, and maybe something's not going well at home, they're more vulnerable and more
Hmm.
susceptible to it. As well as the time that she did have initial affair with Nico, that was the same time that her she was going through the PTSD of finding her mother dead at the
Right.
anniversary, and her husband was not at home; he was out.
And at the time, he hadn't been communicating with her either, because in earlier on in the series, she actually thought that he was having an affair
Right. She did.
because because he wasn't communicating and letting her know what was going on, and actually he missed out on having a strong asset, because she could have been a sounding board for him. Eventually, they got to that place in a way, but I could see how that door was left open because of the misunderstandings and the lack of communication.
Yeah, that's big.
Hmm. And it looks like we have a few more people in the audience. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Lisa.
And we have Frances. Yes, she's saying a reader. As a reader, I love a strong bond as well.
Yeah.
And they did get the bond back. You did a good job of
Pulling it back
pulling
together.
it, not really redeeming her. I don't want to, but because it's still I was reading back through just to get a feel for the mindset back then. I was reading through some of the reviews and stuff. Some people still had a hard time with her, like you mentioned, and never really kind of forgave her, I don't think. But I think she came into her own in that world, and she showed what she was made of. So I had a new respect for her as the series went on. Um, Purple Jam, usually in books when a woman, Purple Jam Girl is saying, usually in books when a woman cheats, a tit for tat for what they have been through. True.
That's true. That's very true.
That's true.
And and also, I think readers don't really understand. I mean, some might, but if they look at the age of Solange, she was very young.
Right.
If I can think about myself as a young early 20s, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't turn to her, but I thought I knew everything.
True.
She although she lived in the project, she was very sheltered. But she was independent. But she hadn't been with a lot of guys. She hadn't had that
Right.
experience
No.
where uh, like if you look at the dichotomy between her and Shonda, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
more street, although her mom, I mean,
Right.
although
Even though she came from more of a
Right.
traditional household.
and Solange was about school in her books, but she
Hmm.
was really exposed to the complexities of relationships. She hadn't even been with anyone in an intimate way. So
Right.
at this age, she was more vulnerable because she was younger and inexperienced than I think a person like Shonda, who was much more experienced.
Hmm.
Um, I did want that to be something that the readers, took away also, that she was very young and she actually did come into her own as a
Yes.
woman because men don't come into maturity until they're 35. So why are we holding women to a much higher standard when she was only like 22 or 23.
True.
That's true.
That's true. It was a definitely a double standard, and when you brought up Shonda, I actually they all had some growing pains. They all made some decisions that weren't the best. But one thing I did love is Shonda and Solange's relationship. Um, they really did have each other's best interests at heart, even though they had their difficulties as well. But they, for the most part, they were, they had that sister bond, and they had different personalities, but they brought out different things in each other.
Yes, yes.
So I love their relationship as well. I loved a lot of the relationships in the book, actually. One that I loved as well was the dynamic between Alfonso and Domingo in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
That-
And that, even for a reader, for me, that relationship was I had a hard time with that when it shifted, when Alfonso started being around his Sicilian family more, and Domingo felt a certain way about it. Uh, I really wanted them to stay tight. So when that shifted, as a reader, I did, because I was invested in that relationship from the beginning. So I did, find that difficult as well.
Yeah, I like to turn things, around sometimes by looking at society and looking
Mhm.
at interpersonal relationships. One of the things that I have noticed, and probably more so, we're in the social media age, so you see it a lot more now, where people become jealous of someone else's success.
Hmm.
Um, and Domingo was street to the street. Even when Alfonso was going to college and
Right.
trying out of the game prior to finding out who his father was, Domingo was kind of, questioning that decision. So they had different personalities, but Domingo was, in my opinion, he was more of the street type
Hmm.
who didn't see the vision that Alfonso saw. Not everybody's going to see that vision.
True.
And there is a lot of jealousy that comes when someone may acquire, whether it's money or fame or power.
Hmm.
So I wanted to bring that dynamic into it as well. Even though they were tight, that they did grow apart because of those insecurities Domingo had. Because Alfonso was a good cousin and he would have died for his cousin,
Sure
but
would. Hmm.
Domingo done some things, which I don't want to give away,
Right.
but it's 30 books. So you can
And then
find
too,
out.
it was realistic though, because I think they even mentioned that their paths were kind of going in a different direction, because um, Alfonso, he was just on a different level, and his cousin wanted to stay where he was. Basically, he wanted to live a certain lifestyle, but he wasn't willing to. I don't know. He wasn't willing to elevate, basically. Um,
Right. To be the
and
king of the.
and that was a issue between them. Although it still was difficult, they grew up together. They were like brothers, so it was difficult to see that them going those different paths uh, within the book. Um, but you did a great job with just the dynamics of the different relationships, and in the different in New York, and also when he was abroad. Um, Loved all the character. Well, not all of them, but but I loved all the character development.
Well, which
Yeah.
character didn't you love? I know which ones were hard for me to write, but what characters did you despise?
Hmm.
Did you despise any particular characters?
I despise. Well, I had a hard time with Sophie in the beginning,
Uh,
and Nico sometimes, but Nico, he was a character that I loved also. So I had a love-hate relationship with him. Um
I
and
thought
I wanted to ask you too, would you characterize Nico as a psychopath?
Mhm. Yes.
is that
I
okay?
would describe him as a spoiled um, mama's boy who believed he was indestructible. Yes, he was a psychopath.
Yes, because he was frightening, but I liked him as well because he did have the capacity to love. He was very loyal, except when he wasn't, but he was very loyal. Um, and then, but he was a serial. He had a lot of flaws. He was a serial cheater. He loved his wife, but he couldn't stay faithful to her.
Yes,
Right.
And I
yes.
had a problem with what's her name, Ariana. Um, because I didn't like how he brought all these outside children and she made allowances for him, but I guess it's because she loved him. Um
Complex character. Like even their meeting, if you recall, she was a very complex character. She worked for the DA's office,
mhm.
but but she was doing some underhanded things.
Yes.
So very complex character. And that was the play on law enforcement. That you can have that title, but not follow the law. So
Mm.
she was a definitely complex character, and I loved writing her because I did it to law school. So it was one of the things that I said I'm going to make sure I have a person in some type of law field in here.
Yes, and she was strong enough for Nico. Her
Yeah.
personality complimented his because she could be kind of out there too.
Mhm.
And so he needed somebody like that. It couldn't have been anybody too straight laced because he's so far outside the lines. So
Um,
I did like them together.
and I do advise, readers before they start the series to actually go and read the book that I did later, Samira, Luzo, the Savannah brothers, which
Hmm.
Nico and his twin,
Right,
because in those stories there are backstories to why he is the way he is. A lot of
right.
abuse. There was a lot of abuse in the mafia. If it's a traditional type thing, it's passed down. There are things that these young men suffered
Hmm.
and would affect, I guess, that ability to let someone in to be able to really express themselves, and he felt he could never walk away. So he was the way he was. And in the story, there's also a scene, I believe it's in the Toronto Brothers, where he he actually has to fight one of the older his older uncle.
Hmm.
So and the beatdown was brutal in front of the entire family. So there's and he was a teen.
Right.
There's a lot of that I put in there so that you can see these are not just characters just for entertainment. They're
Hmm.
also speaking on the traditions that are sometimes passed down and the culture of family. Some of can be abusive,
Right.
and you
Mm.
know, love bond between family can even be a toxic one.
Yes. And we saw a lot of that throughout too. Now, one thing that devastated me and a lot of your readers was Vincent. Was that a
Um,
difficult decision?
yes, that was very hard, but I couldn't write a mafia story, a mob crime story, without killing someone that I know I was affected because it's life. You can go about your daily life, and I've experienced this where
Hmm.
you know someone healthy, someone young and vibrant
Right.
passes away suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, 9/11, you go to work, and I lost a coworker in 9/11. So
Mhm.
personally, I have experienced that sudden, abrupt, you know, passing of someone. So I wanted to put that in the story, but some of this was already written. So that's why I had so many books that I was able to give to the readers and share because those stories have been written over years time and
Right.
then revised and updated to fit into some of the modern things that were going on today. But overall, the theme is still the same. We have the crime, we have the racism, we have the
Mm-hmm.
violence, the oppression. We have the dual standards. We have the police brutality. We have all the same things. It's just a different year, a different month,
Right.
but
Dealing with
Very
the
true.
same.
these are social issues that we're still dealing with to this day.
Now, do you do an outline when you write, or do you just go off? Does it just come to you and you just write, or do you outline first?
No, I usually have it's a loose outline because most of the time even though I can see the story playing out in my head, I
Mm-hmm.
still have to have some type of arc. I still have to think about the character development,
Right.
um, the escalating drama, resolution. I still have to think about the foundational things of a
Right.
story.
Mhm.
But writing a series of that many books, you have to have something written down so that you can keep the flow.
Yes, because there's so many characters. You have the Italian characters. You have the New York Diaz characters, and then Solange and all of those. But Purple Jam Girl is saying the Samira, the Scoring Queen, is not available on Amazon.
Yes. Well, I took it off for a bit because I was doing some revisions and I didn't get a chance to put it back on. Sometimes I go back, change covers, um, or update something that I think should be updated in the book.
Hmm.
So it will be back on within the next, couple of months, but it should
Okay.
be, before the summer.
Okay, sounds good. Now, how do you balance some of the darker themes of the book of the mafia world with the romantic elements of the story?
Well, I think that it was a necessity. The romance part was a necessity, and because it is such a heavy story, um, I a lot of times, if you watch certain movies, you'll see or you read like The Godfather. Those are heavy things, right?
Right, right.
And it was one of the movies that I grew up watching, and I thought to myself, well, there wasn't. It didn't seem like there was genuine, authentic love between Michael and his wife. And
Hmm.
I said,
Mhm.
if you're talking about true love, like unconditional love,
Well, it
something
seemed like in
else.
the beginning there was, but then the more he got into his father his that role, it seemed like it took a turn, in my opinion.
Yes. And so I wanted to show a mob story where the couple was actually loving and unconditional love in a way because that's why the adultery element was central for their relationship. It was, is this going to break them?
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be what does them in?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it was also a transition for this young woman who was a teacher to
Right.
then, marry this guy, have a kid. All these things were happening fast. So she was going through a transition as well. Now, when we had her growing and, she started to really take her position as his wife seriously, we saw a much more confident, um, a much more aware woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that their relationship became even much more solid because they knew what was at stake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he started seeing her in a new light once she started coming into her own, and becoming more of a fighter.
Yes,
Um, and he saw, that she could handle. He didn't have to keep her in this little glass and bubble, basically in this little bubble. Um, he saw what she was made of, basically. I think.
yes. And like I said, it's a fictional story.
Hmm.
It's not based on anything, any person. It really is just a mob story, but with more elements of less.
I think we I don't know what that was, but Katina, I want to bring you in because SW, I introduced Katina to the series, and I want to get her thoughts on what she's read so far. I don't know how far she's gotten in the series. How far have you gotten, Katina?
I'm still in the beginning of the series.
Mhm.
Probably book two.
Okay, so what are your impressions of Alfonso and Solange so far?
um, like you said, taking into account, how their age
Mm-hmm.
and the 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 adjustments that both of them are having to make, basically being thrown into these new positions. Her as wife, mother, him as, boss man, it just them trying to find
Right.
their what works, what doesn't work, trying to him balancing, being away so much and trying to still be a good husband, those kind of things. So it's very interesting. I like the dynamic, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, and the bond with them. But then, like you said, because of the age, they do have the challenges of the insecurities and things like that. And not that we all don't have those,
Right.
because at all ages there's always insecurities, and within really at some point, I guess, at some point. But they're learning at the same time as they're growing, and as you're saying, they get there eventually. But it's just right now I'm at the growing pains part of it, which is
Yes, I'm telling you, it's a wild ride, and you are going to, you are going, you are going to have some like what just happened moments, and um, believe me, you probably gonna be calling me like, what just happened, and then I'm gonna reach out to SW like, okay, she's at this part, but no. But it's an excellent series, as I told you.
hmm
And I know
yeah.
you like the same type of stories, so you definitely are in for a
Yeah.
treat. And Frances is saying she just started reading the first book and she's enjoying it very much. Her favorite books are IR Mafia Romance, and thanks for introducing her to the series. You're welcome, Frances, and keep reading. You're gonna enjoy it. Like I just told Katina, you're gonna be in for a
hmm
wild ride, and I love. Even though Alfonso and Solange go, they have a bumpy road. I do love them as a couple, and I love their bond. I love Alfonso and his swag and his.
Ah,
He is
he
just
has
like,
all of
oh
it.
my goodness. So I wanted to ask you, SW, who did you have in mind? Like, do you have celebrity character inspirations when you came up with the look of Alfonso and Solange?
Listen, I live in New York, and I have known some fine men, fine men, and
Yes.
I'm fine family members. So
Hmm.
imagination is really just upon sometimes the people I see, like
Right.
they that swag, like they will have that swag. if you see a man with swag and dressed in a suit,
Mm-hmm.
that is enough. That's why I gave Alfonso so much swag because I when I was younger and I had to work in the city, I worked in the city for an import company. And, you get on a train and all you see is men in suits. And some of them are very swaggy. You could tell that they are accustomed to, they can go from the suit to streetwear.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, those are some of the images that I saw on a daily, so it wasn't really a celebrity that I had in mind. It was just taking the scenery that and the environment that I'm in, because I'm in New York, I always say I'm from New York, but
Right.
I want to give that dichotomy between show the dichotomy because you can go from the high rises, the wealthy, and be riding the train with, someone who's indigent. But we're all in this moving machine called life.
Mm-hmm. I'm so envious of the ones that are just getting their feet wet with the series because they get to experience this like I did years ago for the first
Mhm.
time. And wait till you meet Geo. Now he is a character in
Oh,
and of himself. He is Alfonso's cousin slash
Okay.
brother. Brother, you'll come to know. But
Uh-huh.
now with Geo's character,
Gio's
um,
actually his half brother.
is our brother. Yeah. What I'm trying now, how would you describe him? Because he's also like a complicated character because he can be um self-destructive. He can be um very malicious, but he also can be very funny and charismatic as charismatic as well. And actually, him and Shonda complemented each other in a lot of ways, but they also, because of their personalities, could also be very dysfunctional at times.
Yeah.
But what, as far as his character, how would you describe him as far as Gio and his personality and who he is to Alfonso?
When I wrote the character, it was to show the difference between Alfonso's upbringing compared
Hmm.
to who was born into the mafia.
Okay.
Gio is comfortable in his role. He relishes it. He loves it. He's accustomed to the attention. He's
Hmm.
accustomed to power. Alfonso is reluctant in
Right.
this. Initially, he was very reluctant to even be part of it. When he found out, he didn't even know who his father was. So all of this, these are all traumas if you consider how he finds out about his dad.
Right.
So this is all new to him. It's coming of age in a way for Alfonso and Solange. That's why I introduced Solange first in the first chapter because she was pivotal. Giuseppe comes in a little bit later, but he comes in strong and cocky. He's very cocky, very brash. He knows he's good looking. He
Yes.
knows he's powerful, and he doesn't squirm about killing someone
Right.
that he believes is that he can't trust. If he feels he can't trust you, he he has been in the mob from birth, basically. He knows what that entails.
And he
So he
doesn't
would,
have any problem, like you said. But that's a good way to describe him. I think is cocky and brash. That definitely describes him. We have a Facebook user who said they just downloaded the first book, and then we have Ola is asking how many books are in the series. It's 30, isn't it?
30 plus 3.
Plus three. Yeah, because it's 30 plus
Oh,
three
the
like
spin-off.
spin-offs, yeah.
Okay.
Where you get background on Nico and his brother Vincent and how they grew up, as well as some background on the family in Italy. Then we have she said, "Oh, yeah, 29 book series." Yes,
Reset for the year.
yes. Now just thinking how lucky you are that you get to read them back to back to back to back. Because believe me, you're gonna be going from one to the next because you're gonna get so engrossed in the story.
Like I
Um,
said, I've been writing these stories since the 90s. So that's why there are so many books. And because, when I did come onto social media, this was when Amazon was just doing the ebook.
right.
So I was one of only a few Black self-publishing, entrepreneurs on
Hmm.
Amazon. My daughter is the one who kind of tapped me because I was against, social media. And I didn't even know that Amazon had this program. And my daughter like tapped me because she knows that I'm like basically I do art, I write. She knew I had this just
Yeah.
like
I
a
came
touch.
to it late too. I was kicking and screaming at first about social media, but it has its advantages. But um, now Maria is Alfonso's mother, and she had a relationship with his father Luzo. She actually was an employee of his,
Hmm.
um, and he basically deceived her, and she fell in love with him, and found out that he was married. But so by the time she came back home, she was pregnant with Alfonso. Now Maria, I had some mixed emotions about her throughout the series as well.
Good.
She's very religious, and she believes that her sin she always thinks it caused a lot of the things that happen in Alfonso's life.
Mm.
Um, but even with her, some of the sometimes I was like, well, you like I couldn't with her. Um, some of this.
I'm laughing because I just hearing you say that, I'm laughing because I couldn't with her when I was writing her. But
Ola is asking SW, can she get them all in print?
yes, I believe most of them are in print. They all should actually be in print.
That's awesome.
Okay, good. Ola, you're in business because she likes the physical books.
Okay. But Maria was a trip. Maria is the religious fanatic
Yes.
hypocrite. And that was fun to write.
Because she loved her son and he loved her, but even she grated on his nerves, especially when they were living abroad.
Yes,
Um, I
yes.
don't know. It was just was she another one where I had like mixed feelings for her as well throughout the series.
She loves fingering those rosary beads.
Yes, most
Mm-mm.
definitely.
Mm-mm.
Now I wanted to ask you too about the titles of the book. I know you stuck with A. Is that just because Alfonso's name starts with A?
I need to make sure that I sit out. And later on, as I was writing the story, actually the original name of the story was Crazy Blue Eyes. So I did, have a different name for the first book
Mm-hmm.
in 1990. I don't want to give the how old I am, but in the early 90s, there was a different name for the book. And it was with a publishing house, so I got the rights back and I changed the name. So I just gave the book name the character's name.
Okay.
So when I started the A, I said I'm gonna stick with this because I wasn't, like I said, I started out like as one of only less than a handful of Black self-publishers on Amazon of multicultural. I don't call it interracial because I truly don't believe that humans are a different race, but they're
Mm-hmm.
they're multicultural books because of the ethnicities and nationalities are different. So when I was introducing the story there, I knew that I was not seeing books like mine anywhere. So I wanted to make sure that it was a different take on the mafia without a Caucasian lead. I wanted that to be the crux of what I did to make sure that I show um, Black women,
Mhm.
Spanish, different nationalities, ethnicities, religions. So I wanted to make sure that was in this series. And A was just a way of staying in my lane, just doing
Okay.
what I.
And I noticed too, from reading, like even with the like when Alfonso was thinking, when we got his like his inner thoughts, he had his mind worked in like a philosophical type mind set. Is that do you was that intentional, or is that just my imagination? But that's how it came off, that he thought the way he thought was like in philosophical terms.
Yes, he was very reflective. He was possibly a lot more mature than, he grew up fast. He was helping
Hmm.
out his mom. He had to be the man of the house.
Right.
And he was also very, very smart. So I looked at it as one of the things that, like I said, I look at things sometimes as human conditions, um, because sometimes what happens with an intelligent person of color is that they're sometimes overlooked. Where in school, if he was a different ethnicity, they might have caught his genius, and steered him in a path where he could have possibly done something else other than sell,
Right.
narcotics.
Right. But even him though, when he's introduced, he's of that mindset. He's started like legitimately with the real estate and all of that. Um,
Mhm.
and I think he tells his cousin, I'm thinking about getting out of this.
Yes, yes. He
Hmm.
went to Colombia, which is kind of unheard of when you think about a lot of, like some of the mob stories that I've looked at. Then I think about college
Right.
and getting out of the game. They love it. He actually wanted to go into real estate. He wanted to be a real estate developer, a mogul.
Right.
So he was using the drug money to put his to pay his way through an Ivy League school and to buy buildings, because in throughout the story I also show that he bought real estate all over the
Hmm.
world. He's into like solar energy, which is something that, that's probably me in there a little bit, the solar energy, sustainable things like that. He's very into fashion, but he's into
Yes.
fashion of not name brand. Like the things that he wears, you will not be able to go buy in the store because they're tailored just for him. So he's very fashionable, but he's
Hmm.
the name brand, not any of the characters really are, like even Solange, those things to me were kind of part of the message as well about these characters to identify them from Shonda, and maybe Gio, is
Hmm.
that Solange and Alfonso weren't materialistic, and they were more about sustainability, more about
Right.
you know, giving back to their communities in some way, whether that was, going to a black owned or Spanish owned shop.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
because
that,
Solange ended up doing that foundation. Wasn't it the foundation
yeah,
that she created? Yeah, and
yeah,
I believe was I don't know if Ariana was. I think it was all the ladies that got together and they were a
yeah.
part of
And
it, of that world. Um, Now I did like too, and I think I mentioned this. We see how Alfonso and his cousin Domingo, their paths kind of like drifted apart. But what I like too is that Solange, even though she was on this new path, she brought Shonda along. She didn't. Their friendship held strong.
Mhm.
Um, and Shonda was very intelligent and savvy herself. She just was more what's the word?
Wild.
She was wild. She was definitely wilder. She had a
Yes.
she was more definitely more of a
Uh,
extrovert
Right.
than
Extra. She's outgoing. Yeah.
than Solange was, but they complemented each other. And um, I'm all about strong female friendships and bonds, so I appreciated that their friendship lasted throughout, all of this, even with all the stuff they went through, um, that they still stayed strong. And even though some of the male friendships didn't last, or the male relationships.
And that was, part of, the beauty of their relationship too. They were so different, but I felt it important, as Black women, that we're not all the same. It doesn't mean that, you know, personality. And Shonda was actually a good friend. You know,
You breaking up just a little bit, SW. You said Shonda what?
I think Shonda is really good. I
Nope. It's like some static.
Okay, I'm hearing that also. Can you hear me now?
No, I can't. Yeah.
Hearing you.
I don't know what's going on. But yeah, Shonda was and Solange were very good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And they had their growing pains as well. But in the end, they were still sisters. Like, the brother, Solange was an only child.
Right. And now with Gio and Alfonso, they had their struggles. But I like the way that their brotherhood also developed, and it was difficult for Alfonso because Gio had so many self-destructive type tendencies,
Yeah,
and he was trying to be a good brother to him and a good supporter. But in the Gio basically though was there for Alfonso. He never would have like betrayed him or anything like that.
right.
He had his back, um, and vice versa. So I love that too. I ended up loving the relationship that they ended up having, and I love the relationship that Gio and Solange ended up having. Um, and Gio was he had some lighthearted moments. Actually, some of the lighthearted moments were anything that him and any just about any scene that him and Shonda were in, whether they were together or separate. But and that I'm glad you brought that in because there was some heavy moments in the series. So it's good that we got some of them with their lighthearted moments as well.
Thank you.
Now I think I told you that we usually go over our favorite scenes and heartfelt scenes. We'll stick with because Tina, I know you only did book 1 and 2. So what was one of your favorite scenes or favorite moments of the books that you read?
I had a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, it was a lot, wasn't it?
But some of them were really subtle. Like when Alfonso he paid the tuition for his
Oh,
classmate Samson
hmm.
financial aid. I guess because he got arrested, and I thought that was pretty. You
And
know,
it showed Alfonso's character.
yeah, that was like those are the softest of the other sides of Alfonso that
Hmm.
I like the part when they in the beginning when they found common ground with the poetry. I think I forget what it was.
Oh yes. That's one of my favorites too. When they were talking about, and he actually surprised you. Talking about Solange, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he actually surprised Solange because I guess
Mhm.
she didn't expect that from him for him to know
No,
who
she
she was
did
talking
not.
about with the poetry.
Yeah, so that was nice. Um, one of the I think one of the I guess the thoughts or the phrases that Alfonso made, um, he said that death was their introduction, but love became their bond, and
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty cool. Um, so those were at least a few. I mean,
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes was the scene in the beginning when you touched on that when Alfonso and Solange are in bed and they're getting to know each other and they're having this very philosophical, intelligent conversation, and I just the rapport between the two came through. So I have in parentheses that I like that I wish at times different times throughout the series that they had kept that same communication that
right.
they had in the beginning, and a lot of the stuff, the misunderstandings and stuff, when when it happened between them. But another favorite scene that I had was in book two, the club scene, when Alfonso shows up when Solange, Shonda, and the bodyguard
Mm,
Frankie, who has a crush on Solange, when
mm,
they are out dancing, and then they come back to the table, and Alfonso is there, and
Mhm.
he's not too pleased. And then his response when they have their moment is with another woman on the dance floor. It was very petty, but it was very raw, and I love the rawness of the scene. So SW did a great job on that scene. I thought it was very realistic, very raw. Um, and I love the
thank,
dynamic between him and Solange in that moment as well.
thank you, ladies. I appreciate you reading it and even giving it, you know, that wonderful feedback to me because, like I said, I was writing the story for a long time. The characters have been dear to my heart. But it's sometimes like when you get these rejection letters from like these big publishers and they're
Hmm.
saying not for their targeted audience or change their ethnicity. And then you find that there is an audience. One of the
Yes.
things about putting my book and self-publishing it was finding those, my daughter thought I was crazy when I was happy that two people were like,
Yes.
I found your book. And she told me to do a Facebook page and two people. I told her two followers. And she was like, that's it, two.
Yes, but that's two people loving your work and acknowledging your work.
Mhm.
So I was super excited for that. And I have not lost that, that excitement and joy for anyone to
Hmm.
just open up the book, read it, Like that's one of the things because I'm a big literacy like advocate because I think about my ancestors and the illiteracy laws, like, with anti-literacy laws that they had to endure. And I think, I'm always encouraging people to pick up a book, read it,
Hmm.
because you never know what you're going to get inside of that book. Don't judge a book by its cover, but also as a person who's writing, I'm thinking like before you judge anything, open it up and read it for yourself. Um, and
Yeah, I agree with that.
celebrate, writers, because I celebrate readers, but I also know how important it is and how much time it takes to write a book. It's it's a lot that goes into writing the research. You ladies, you appreciate it. You all know what I'm
Oh
talking
yeah,
about.
most definitely. Just the little intricacies throughout the book, so well done, and just like I said, the character development. I loved Solange and Alfonso, but I also liked all the supporting characters as well. Um, so very, very, very good series. I've been telling people about this series for years, so I'm glad to have new readers that I can introduce to it, because I know they're going to love it as much as I love it. Now, when the series came to an end, was it bittersweet for you, or did you think it was time?
It was time. I write other stories, and those that believe me, that story, I live with that story. So, when it was time for it to end, it was more so that I found the readership. I'm glad that I got those things out of me. It was just like really just getting out every word that I wanted to say. Um, but I also write, I write sci-fi, I one of the things that I was looking at in a stat was that Gen Xers kind of read across genres. So
Mm-hmm.
I write across genres, and I find that the sticking with one thing is not really how I write.
Right.
Something might come to me and I might say, oh, okay, this is a drama, you know. So I have many other books out there. I have stories about a warrior angel. I have a
Oh, really? I
story.
didn't know that.
Yes, Evelyn Clark. As a matter of fact, it's coming out this Saturday. I
Okay.
republished it. I'm republishing it. It's a Black Warrior Angel. Um, so that's a sci-fi book. I have Missing Person Dr. Nebosha. It's about organ transplant vendors in the black market. So
Hmm.
there's In Cold Blood. It's about a family of money launderers, cryptocurrency coding. So I'm interested in so many things, and so many characters come to me a lot that I would do myself as an author, as a writer, and a person of you know creative inspiration to just continue along a mob thing.
Right, right. And I'm the same. I love to read all different genres and stuff. So I'm here for all of that. And Facebook user saying, yes, sure, you're right. We're going to love this series. Yes, you will. Believe me. I would not steer you wrong. You are going to love it. Um, and I'm also streaming inside SW, just so you know. I'm also streaming inside. I'm in admin in an IR group for Mallory Monroe. So I'm also streaming inside there because I know it's a lot of IR lovers inside that group,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's gracious enough to
She's
like.
amazing. She's one of the like I say, I try to make sure that people understand that, there were some pioneers in Malik and the Amazon publishing, and she is one of them.
Right.
Um, Piano Made,
Right. I actually told Katina about her recently too, about the Battaglia series.
Mm-hmm.
right.
That's another good one.
I do believe that, the readers who can go and check out their books and share them is how the word gets out, and that's important because you see what they're doing in terms of literature. They're taking out a lot of books written by Black
Yes.
and so it's important for everyone to really support. This is Black History Month, but you know, Black writers really can use the support, the sharing as as much as possible on social media.
Yes. I definitely agree, and I'll definitely continue to do my part. And I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to speak with me. I know you don't do a lot of interviews, so I'm very, very grateful that you did this one. And it was a pleasure speaking to you about the Alfonso series, and I look forward to everything that you have coming up. Now, are you doing? Are you going to be doing it under SW Frank?
Well, I have books out now. If you go on Amazon or you go on Google Books, you just type in SW Frank. You'll see a whole bunch of books pop up. I have so many, I lost count.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Sounds good.
yeah. So if you see that, my books will pop up, and I really do really appreciate everyone took the time to even open a book, read the series, give it a chance. Just give
Mm-hmm.
it because it's taking you on a journey. It's one of those stories where I do believe it's coming of age, but um, it's also a look at the human condition. And that's one of the things that, I really want people to take away from it is
Mm-hmm.
that they're not perfect characters. They're not because there's no perfect people.
Right. And they're not, and they're very nuanced, and but they're so realistic. And like I said, I had such mixed emotions about so many of the characters, and that's a testament to to the great character development. Because like I said, I love Nico, but at times I couldn't stand him for some of the things that he some of the decisions that he made. But I loved his character to, at the core he was very loyal person, and he was loyal to his family. His he loved his wife and his kids, even though he, had some issues with fidelity. But and I love Geo. I wish he uh, at times I wish that he had more, that he could see himself for, as a great person that he was at first. At times he was kind of, like I said, self-destructive, but he also was a character that, I loved his character as well. You had some very strong women in the series. Love that.
Um,
Sophie, I side eye her a lot in, in the
yeah.
series, but she was
Oh,
very strong woman, and she was the matriarch.
yes, she was. She
Yes,
definitely was.
a
Thank
lot of strong female characters in this series.
Well, thank you, ladies. I really appreciate you reading the story. And once again, I am so honored that you even asked me to come on. So, thank
Oh,
you.
You're very welcome. It look like you have some new readers to the series. So far, I've counted like 5 people who said they're
mhm.
getting the book. So
Oh, that is so tell them thank you. I appreciate it.
yes,
And I look forward to their commentary, because I do understand that some of the things are hard to deal with. But if you look at it in terms of, realism, that's what I write. I don't
right.
write. I have this in me that I don't want to continue the formulaic,
Hmm.
romance because to me, I think that puts people at a disadvantage for the unrealistic, like
Right.
my son. So I wouldn't want them to believe that, you have to do certain things for a person to love you. You don't have to, like some of the things that I read in the light romance, it's so far fetched that I couldn't write that. I mean, I've read enough where I know what I like and what I don't like. So if you like what I write, we vibing. So
I
I
think
do like it because we still, even though they, have their bumpy road, we still get that romance at the
that.
core of that of this character, these two characters, and throughout the book because there's other characters as well who have their own love affairs and love stories.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, so
So
I'm love it. I love it, and I'm here for it. And then we have to remember that it is a mafia story. So even though it was difficult, at times to some of my beloved characters that I loved had to go through some very traumatic experiences. But that is the world
That's life.
that's the world. Yeah, that's life, and that's the world that they are in specifically.
Mhm.
That
important
mafia
to
world. So
yeah, it's a crime drama, and there will be crime. There will be
right,
illegal activity. So you just gotta know that is what criminals
that's what
do.
we're picking up. Right. I had to remind myself of that a few times over the years when I was reading it. I'm like, oh my gosh. But, no,
So
because
when
I tell you, I wanted to reach out to you. I think I did when you were still on Facebook back then. I think I reached out to you about Vincent. I'm like, what is going on? But
Oh my goodness. Listen, I had someone, I appreciate like any comment, like I
mhm,
don't, I feel like I do my job. If you hate my story, I did my job. If you love my story, I did my job. You read it, right? So
mhm,
one of the funniest things, it wasn't funny because I kind of felt the reader's pain,
right.
but there was a reader who said that she had to ask her husband because if she should go on reading because the character did something that she doesn't agree with, and she wrote that in a review. And I don't usually respond to reviews because it's subjective,
Right,
what
right,
you might not like, but I thought that was to me like, wow, the story hit that hard that she needed to get
right.
her spouse's permission to read it. It's fiction. But, that's how serious some people were taking the story. And I didn't realize that it was having that much of an impact on
Mm.
readers. But then on the flip side, I had another reader and couple who reached out to me and told me that they had never read anything like this before, and it kind of
Oh, you
to
broke
me.
up again. I don't know what happened.
yeah,
Yep, it totally went out.
I
Nope, can't hear anything.
yeah.
Anything except static for some reason.
Mhm.
Okay, can you hear me better?
Oh, that's
That's a little better.
a
Yeah.
little better.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that, I've had both sides of the coin, readers reaching out to me because they had never read a story like that before, and because it some had said that they had never thought of adultery in that way. So it was like, it was eye
And like you said,
opening.
it's subjective. People. Some things are going to resonate with people more than others, and some things are going to affect people more
Right,
than others. So yeah.
right. So that was eye opening in terms of, being on social media and getting feedback. Usually in the old days,
Right. Right. Right.
nobody, nobody reads the book. You move on, right? But, you can hear everybody's, opinion in real time.
True. Right. So that's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
That's true.
Katina, before we sign off, did you have anything else that you wanted to say or ask SW before we sign
No,
off?
I think you guys covered just about everything. I just appreciate the background and the motive and the motive, knowing these things as I go forward,
Mm-hmm.
will be like really
And
helpful.
knowing her
Oh,
perspective
yeah.
for why she wrote certain things. Yeah.
Yeah, it will definitely give me a different spin on it when I'm reading it. So the questions that you had, I probably will have, and like,
Right.
oh, okay, that's what, you know.
Yeah, because I was like, so many times throughout, like, oh my goodness.
And
But
those books always like I always feel like when I read books like that, sometimes I have to take a break and like
yeah, yeah, you do. You get emotional and
I get
everything.
emotional
Yeah.
and I'm like in real life I'm mad and like
Mm-hmm. Oh, you gonna have those moments. You gonna have those moments where you're gonna be like trying to throw the book across the
Yeah.
room sometimes at
and
some of the
it's
characters.
okay. I think it's a part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people will say they like this they go backwards and read, but I like to feel everything. I
Yeah,
like
me too. Yeah, I don't
all
read
of it. The
backwards at
crying,
all.
the yelling, the screaming, the bonding, all of it. The girlfriend moments, the male bonding, all
Because
of
you
it.
go because if you start at the end to see how it ends, you're gonna miss a
Hmm.
whole lot of
And we all want to know how it
right,
ends.
right. Well, she when you figure at the last it was book 30, so they've all done a lot of growing, and I believe book it's been a while since I read it SW, but book 30 is the newer generation is in it too, right? They're older.
Yes, I didn't want to do a spinoff with the kids because, I figured with 30 books first, I've covered it. And I gave each character, TLC. One of the things that the only reason why I did the other three books was to give it a backstory on the adults, the older
Right,
adults like Diego, Lugo, and the Serrano brothers, so you can see their backstories in detail because it was
right,
very crucial for the readers to understand that Samira was African and she had started the mafia. So I wanted to show her as she was a princess. And I wanted to talk about the female mutilation that was going on in Africa. There's subject matters in there that I weaved into the story. Um,
hmm I have to tell you too. I love the growth. I liked Alfonso from the beginning, but I loved his growth throughout the series. As far as how he comes into, I mean, he is truly a boss. He
mm,
is so, and then he's so smooth and so he can be, he can be so. He does what needs to be done, like throughout the series. But it's so many elements to him. And oh, we forgot to talk about Vincent's son. I loved
mm,
him.
mm.
I loved him. I can't think of his name, but I loved him.
Yeah, I tried to make all the characters. They were all crucial to the story. Writing children is a very difficult task, but I have children, so
Yeah,
um,
I'm gonna have to go back through and I already started rereading, so I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to, but when I get to the part where he's introduced, I'm gonna have to reach out to you and let you know because I loved his character and he did a lot of growing as well. He was very insecure in the beginning, and I loved how Nico took him under his wing, and so did Alfonso.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. So
so
you're talking about Sergio.
Sergio, yeah,
Yes, but I Sergio. Oh, I really my heart felt for Sergio writing him.
yes,
Like throughout the book, one of the things that um, if you readers cried, trust me, I cried. If you readers were hurt, trust me, at a certain point, I was hurt by a lot of things that I was compelled to do
right,
as a reader, because I am not the characters. But when you're writing these characters, you have to move outside of yourself and say,
mm-hmm,
that
Mhm.
this would not be authentic if this character does not do this. So
Mhm.
I did a lot of things that for me, I was like, oh my God, what if I don't put this here? It's gonna read like it's contrite,
right,
it's flushed out.
Mhm.
And certain personalities, you have to stay with that personality. So I was doing a lot of roller coaster emotion stuff right in this story because these characters are complex and some of the issues are very heavy. So I had to give the levity, like with Mika, not Mika Giuseppe, had to be more humorous. I had to give Sergio a little bit of humor because Alfonso is
yes, he was. I loved it. I
brooding.
can't wait for you to get introduced to him, Katina.
Mhm.
He's some books in,
Okay.
but I loved his personality, and he has a great personality as well,
Okay.
and he warmed my heart, and I love that. Like I said, Alfonso took him under his wing, and so did Nico. And Nico, he doesn't love anybody but his brother and and Alfonso though. But um, it's some little twists and turns in that too that I won't give away. But with that relationship, but
Yeah, and Sergio was the quintessential, you know, street gangster thug who's not really a thug when you come into the terms of the
right,
crime. See, there was the comparison in that as well that I wanted to put there. You might feel you street and you thuggish on the corner on your block, But
Right.
when you're dealing with organized crime, it's a whole network, and it is much more, they're much more brutal. So he wasn't really as he was a wonderful character to write because
He
he
definitely was. He wasn't as hardcore as the
exactly.
rest of them. He had a lot of heart
Yes.
and and I think that was endearing. At first, Nico, he didn't like that. He wanted him to be harder. but
Yes.
but I just can't wait for you all to read the book, read the series, and get to know these amazing characters, so you'll know who Sergio is, and all the rest of the characters that we're talking about, because they don't come in until later in the series. But man, you're in for a great treat, and keep me posted when you're reading them. Let me know what you think, and uh, and I'll let SW know. A lot of people say they're starting it tonight, so
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, lady. And like I said, it's sort of like a love letter to Black women as well, and to all women because I do have like Sicilian women in there and to Spanish women in there. But for the Black women, I wanted them to understand and to know that, you travel outside of the US, and you'll see that you are loved by many ethnicities, and it's one of the things that I try to make sure that, Black women understand how beautiful they are, how different and wonderful we are, and that's what makes us so special. So thank you all for reading, and I really enjoyed the talk. I did.
thank you. I did as well. And again, I appreciate you coming on. And I thank everyone in the audience for coming out. And they're all saying they enjoyed this as well.
Yes.
And a lot of people are going to start the series tonight. I'm excited for you all. It's a great read. And believe me, a lot of us, we read a lot of the, stories like this. So believe me, when I
Mhm.
say it's up there top notch, you're going to love it. Um, and everybody is saying thank you for your time and they enjoyed themselves. Katina, thank you for co-hosting tonight. And again, everyone, have a great evening and I'll see you next time.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.